My fiancé just handed me a prenup. What do I do? If your fiancé just handed you a prenuptial agreement, the first thing I want you to know is this: don't panic. Don't assume your relationship is in trouble. Don't accuse him of not trusting you. Don't burst into tears. Don't call your mother. Don't call your best friend. And please don't post about it on social media. Instead, take a deep breath. Look at your fiancé and say something very simple. Okay, I'll need my own attorney to review this. That's it. You don't need a speech. You don't need an argument. You don't need to defend yourself. You're simply acknowledging that you've been handed a legal document, and before you sign it, you want your own attorney to explain what it means. That's exactly what any reasonable person should do. Now, one of the first things I hear is, I can't afford my own lawyer. If that's your situation, then your response should be just as straightforward. Tell your fiancé, I can't responsibly sign a legal document without having my own attorney review it. So how are we going to pay for that? Notice what you are not saying. You're not demanding that he pay. You're not refusing to sign. You're simply pointing out the obvious. Independent legal advice is part of a fair process. And if the agreement is important enough to prepare, it's important enough for both of you to understand. Over the years, I've had countless brides sit in my office and tell me, my fiancé already explained the agreement to me. Almost every single time I ask, tell me what he said it means. Then I read the agreement. And I can honestly tell you that in almost every case, what the bride believes the agreement says and what the agreement actually says are two very different things. That doesn't mean the fiancé is trying to deceive anyone. In fact, most of the time, I don't think that's what's happening at all. Usually, he misunderstood it himself. Maybe his attorney summarized it in a sentence or two. Maybe he heard the words, everything stays separate, and assumed that was what the entire agreement said. Maybe he never asked enough questions. Legal documents are full of terms that sound simple, but have very specific legal meanings. Two intelligent people can read the same paragraph and come away with completely different understandings. That's why you should never rely on your fiancé's explanation of the agreement, no matter how honest he is. And frankly, he shouldn't rely on yours either. Each of you deserves advice from an attorney whose only job is to protect your interests. What is your attorney actually looking for? So now you've made it to the appointment. You walk into your attorney's office with the agreement in your hand. What happens next? A lot of people think we're looking for hidden loopholes or trying to beat the other attorney. That's really not what a good prenup review is about. The first thing I'm trying to understand is you. I want to know who you are, what you own, what your fiancé owns, what your future plans are, whether one of you expects to stay home with children, whether either of you owns a business, expects to inherit money, or has family assets that need to be protected. The same agreement can be perfectly appropriate for one couple and completely inappropriate for another. Then I start reading the agreement itself. Is everything disclosed properly? Has your fiancé listed all of his assets, income, businesses, debts, and interests? Have you done the same? Full financial disclosure is one of the foundations of a good prenuptial agreement. You can't intelligently waive rights, give them up, if you don't know what you're waiving. Next, I want to make sure the agreement actually says what you think it says. This is where people are often surprised. A fiancé may tell you it just keeps what we already came into the marriage with separate. That sounds simple. But then I start reading the actual document, and I discover it's also talking about appreciation on separate assets, income earned during the marriage, retirement accounts, businesses started after the marriage, debts, real estate, inheritances, gifts, life insurance, estate rights, and a dozen other issues that were never discussed between the two of you. That's why I always tell clients not to judge a prenup by the first page or by the title. The real issues are usually buried in the details. Don't assume something is standard. One of the biggest mistakes I see is someone saying, his attorney told him this is just a standard prenup. It really isn't a standard prenup. Every attorney has a different drafting style. Every client has different goals. Every family has different assets. Every couple has different concerns. Some agreements are very simple. Some are incredibly complicated. Some are fair. Some need a great deal of work. Just because a provision appears in a lot of agreements doesn't necessarily mean it's appropriate for your marriage. Everything is negotiable. This is probably the biggest misconception I hear. People think a prenup is like a take it or leave it contract. It's not. Most of the agreements that come into our office are negotiated. Sometimes we change a single paragraph or sentence or two. Sometimes we rewrite half the agreement. Sometimes we add provisions the other attorney never even considered. Remember, the attorney who prepared the first draft represents your fiancé. Their job is to protect your fiancé's interest. My job is to make sure your interests are protected as well. That doesn't mean we're trying to create a fight. It means we're trying to create an agreement that both of you can live with. Ironically, the best prenups usually come out of thoughtful negotiations. Not because either side won, but because both people felt heard. The questions you should be asking. As we're reviewing the agreement together, I want you asking questions, lots of them. What happens if one of us stops working to raise children? What happens if one of us becomes disabled? What if we buy a house together? What if one of us starts a business? What if one of us receives an inheritance? What happens to retirement accounts? What if one of us pays off the other person's student loans? What happens if one of us supports the other through medical school or graduate school? These aren't negative questions. These are life questions. The purpose of the prenup isn't to predict divorce. It's to talk honestly about life before life becomes complicated. Don't wait until 2 weeks before the wedding. This is another problem I see all the time. The agreement shows up 2 weeks before the wedding, or 1 week, or sometimes 3 days before. Now everyone is stressed. The invitations have gone out. Guests have booked flights. The venue has been paid. Nobody wants to postpone the wedding. That is not the time to begin negotiating a legal agreement. The earlier you start this process, the better. It gives everyone time to think, to ask questions, make changes, and make good decisions without unnecessary pressure. Should you ever just refuse to sign? Sometimes the answer is yes. Not because it's a prenup, because it's not a fair process. If someone refuses to let you have your own attorney, that's a problem. If someone refuses to provide financial information, that's another problem. If someone tells you to sign immediately without reading it, that's a big problem. If someone says, if you love me, you'd sign it, that's a definite problem. Healthy relationships aren't afraid of questions. Healthy relationships respect informed decisions. My final advice. After nearly 40 years of practicing family law, I can tell you this. I've never had a client come back and tell me they regretted taking the time to understand a prenuptial agreement. I have, however, had many people tell me they wished they had asked their attorneys more questions before they signed it. So if your fiancé hands you a prenup, don't panic. Don't assume the relationship's in trouble. Don't assume the agreement is unfair or that your partner doesn't trust you. But don't assume it's fair either. Get your own attorney, read every page, ask every question, negotiate where it makes sense. Then, if you're comfortable, sign, knowing you understand exactly what you're agreeing to. Because a prenuptial agreement isn't just another document. It's one of the most important legal decisions you'll ever make. And you deserve to make that decision with complete confidence. I'm Sherry Rifkin, one of the founders of Bridelawyer. And if you want to talk to us, go to bridelawyer.com and you can even book a consultation.